So my name's Caroline Orchiston. I work at the University of Otago and I'm the science lead for Project AF8. The science around the Alpine fault tells us that there's an inevitability about the next earthquake because of this long record of earthquakes going back through time. So what we've done in designing the scenario is using the best available science to describe a credible hazard scenario for what the Alpine fault might do in future. The first job for me as science lead for Project AF8 was bringing together a team of the best Alpine fault scientists in New Zealand. So in August of 2016 we had a meeting in Christchurch and about 30 scientists turned up. We spent 2 days working on various aspects of the scenario, including the type of earthquake that we expect, the size, the magnitude, and where that earthquake might initiate, where the earthquake might start. So one thing that we were really clear on was that we were developing one particular scenario for the Alpine fault, but obviously there are many different ways that the Alpine fault might behave. And so we've always communicated that quite clearly to people we're talking with, that this is one outcome and it gives people a sense of how it might turn out for them in their place, but realising that there are many different ways that the Alpine fault might behave. Another really important part of the scenario was that it was interdisciplinary. So it wasn't just about the fundamental Alpine fault science, it was also about the built environment, the infrastructure and the social implications of an earthquake of this scale. Using science in a scenario like this is really important because it gives real credibility to what we then present to Civil Defence for them to use.
So my name's Angus McKay, I'm the manager for Southland Civil Defence. And I'm also the chair of the steering group for Project AF8. The SAFER Framework is the South Island Alpine Fault Earthquake Response Framework. What we've done with the project is use the best science available to come up with a scenario that's the maximum credible event. So it's a meaningful scenario, but it's probably one of the worst case scenarios. And we look at that information from the scientists and we actually plan how to coordinate that response in the first 7 days. In the South Island there's 6 civil defence groups which align with the regional councils. But what we've realised is that with an Alpine fault rupture it's going to affect every group in the South Island. So we're working really hard to coordinate the response across all those groups and nationally as well. When an event of this size happens, there's going to be a period of a few days where it takes a while to get that coordination going. So we're trying to help communities start looking after themselves, build a bit of resilience within their own networks, and then as time builds and the response builds, we can feed into those existing networks and keep that local response going at a much wider regional and national level. This document will change over time. It's a really good think piece to make people think, well, how do I respond to this? How do I prepare for this? And how do I work towards a good coordinated response? So we don't think this is a final document. There's a national exercise going to be run at the end of 2020, and we're certainly after that exercise we'll review the document and see how we can improve it and look at how well we're progressing with the preparation for the event.
Kia ora, I'm Mitch, or John Mitchell. I'm Program Manager for Project AF8. I was in the role from 2016 to mid-2018. We took the scenario that had been developed through the science workshops in 2016 and then modified that to suit each of the regions of the South Island because each of them are different. They've got their own geology, they've got their own infrastructure, communities, different industry, different history as well. So we develop them to be able to be applied in those particular contexts. We took each of the scenarios for each of the regions, worked them through in detail throughout the workshops, took the common features from each of them, in particular the cross-boundary issues were what we were focusing on. What were the things that regions would need to be aware of from their neighbouring region as far as needs were concerned, or where they might need to move people or resources to. They were the things that we focused on. We took those and developed that into a focused situation that was then included in the framework to then build the planning, the more generic planning that led to some tools which are within the framework that can now be applied by the partner agencies. All of this needs to be done in a collaborative way. None of them can do it on their own. That's one of the key aspects of Project AF8 and the SAFER Framework, that it's about partnerships, so about working together. So they need to take that and look at what it means for them and their partners. What are the things that they take from that are clear that they need to be able to do now, or if they don't have the capability, how they will grow that capability, perhaps acquire more resources, build other partnerships, enable communities to be more resilient, and they can connect with those. Communities will be expecting, because that's the communication that they've had delivered to them for quite some decades now, that they need to be prepared to support themselves for the first 3 days after an emergency. The framework puts in place arrangements and expectations that the organisations will be aiming to deliver to, so that they're able to start meeting needs either immediately or at least within that first 3 days and into the following week. There's a lot of work that needs to be done by some organisations in particular, because they haven't thought about the specific impacts of something like an Alpine fault earthquake to put the detailed planning in place to be able to meet those needs. So there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done over the next few years as organisations work with one another and with their communities to build that capability.